Hi, welcome. I am so happy that we're finally working together. So settle in, get comfortable. When we're done, you're going to have this really simple path to create more persuasive messages in wildly less time. I'm also glad you decided to use the video version because it lets me talk to you directly and go into more depth this way. I think it'll be easier to learn. So you've made a great decision. Let's go ahead and start with an overview of your new Persuasion Foundation series and how I encourage you to use it. Each video is part of a process and each builds on the one before, so no surprise, I encourage you to watch them in order. If you have the PDF and you're using it alongside the video is organized a little differently because I think it'll be easier for you to learn that way. The topics are the same, but the flow is just a little bit different. That's sort of the magic of video training. I hope you don't mind if I start with something kind of obvious. The reason we all want to be more persuasive is because it helps us get more of what we want, right? That's what it's all about. You probably already know that phrase means a lot to me. It means a lot to me because my personal mission is to help good people get more of what they want, and helping people be more persuasive is just the best way I know how to do that. So if we can both agree that being more persuasive is a path to getting you more of what you want, you've got my commitment to helping you get there. It's our first time really working together, right? So you may want to know a little bit more about this person who you're trusting with your business success. So I'm going to start with just this first video in the series with a few minutes about my background and why I believe so deeply that the best ideas should win. Going way, way back, I was a public school kid growing up in Southern California. I went to Harvard for college, came back to California for business school at Stanford. To me, Harvard was super academic. And then Stanford was incredibly people-oriented. It was a perfect combination for me because I learned to work hard and keep learning. I also learned to never forget that people are the center of everything we do. College was also the first time that I started seeing wonderful people with great ideas who just couldn't get anyone else to listen. It was my first time being kind of slapped in the face with this reality that the best ideas don't always win. And it kind of made me crazy. I didn't know what to do with it then. And I, of course, had no idea that one day far into the distance, that conviction that the best ideas should win would become the foundation of my entire business direction. Along the way, I fell in love with the Apple Macintosh. So after business school, I went to Apple and joined the effort to change the world. By the way, we might sound kind of naive, early Apple people, and a lot of tech people when we talk about changing the world, but that is totally, honestly what we meant at the time. Starting at the bottom at Apple was just what I needed. I don't have to tell you that Apple has always been good at having these sort of powerful messages that people resonate with. So it became the perfect place for me to start learning how to tell that kind of a powerful story. I also met my gorgeous, smart, wonderful wife there, so it was a pretty good first job. Then I got recruited to go to Next. Next, you may know, is the company that Steve Jobs started after he left Apple before going back to run Apple again. If you know anything about Steve, you can imagine that whole experience working with him was incredible. It was life-changing, and it was often a little bit stressful. My nutshell description of Steve is everything you've heard about him, both the good stuff and the bad stuff, is probably true, and it's probably understated. I will occasionally bring you lessons that come from that experience working with Steve, but I'm going to tell you right now, for every lesson I bring you, there are like 10 more that I won't mention. Almost all of us that work with Steve, we tend to edit ourselves. Even though he was incredibly quotable, we tend to not want to always be talking about the things we learned because it kind of makes us sound like groupies. But I promise you, I will bring you the best stuff. After Next, time passed. I became a VP marketing and a chief marketing officer for multiple companies. Some were super successful, some weren't. But either way, my job every day was to learn how to tell powerful stories that got people, customers, partners, vendors, all the people that mattered to us to be able to take the action we needed. My life changed dramatically about 20 years ago when I decided to start my own company, consulting primarily to CEOs and then occasional to chief marketing officers. My clients range from pretty new startups to giant Fortune 50 companies. What they had in common was one typical profile. They had a good product or service, good enough that they were making their customers happy, but they weren't growing fast enough. My job was to fix that. My job was literally to help their best ideas win. I can't tell you how lucky I feel to have been able to spend most of my working life doing this. I never did really any marketing or sales. People knew me and they knew my work and they would call, or people that I would work with would move to a new company and then that company would become my client. I was incredibly fortunate. Throughout all these years, two ideas kept growing. The first was that persuasion isn't about tricking people into doing something they don't want to do. Life is too short to BS people. In the long run, scam artists lose, and we want them to lose. A powerful message is like a gift to your audience. It opens the eyes of a busy person to realize that what you want them to do is actually in their best interests. We are going to talk a lot about solving people's problems rather than shoving things down their throat, and that's going to start in this lesson series. The second seed drives my entire business now. The best ideas should win. In almost every company I've worked with, both inside the company and as their consultant, I saw people with very strong ideas get steamrolled by worse ideas that were wrapped in better communication skills. It makes me crazy, and it is worth fixing. The world will be better off if we can fix that together, if we can together work to make sure that the best ideas really do win. And I'm lucky again because my work opened that door for me. It showed me I have a way to help more people get more of what they want by helping their best ideas win. That door that opened was when I was asked to help people learn to tell their own story instead of being asked to write their story for them. I had to distill what I'd learned from Apple, from Steve Jobs, from running marketing, from consulting. I had to distill all of that into these very simple lessons. When I got people's reactions and I saw how well it was working, when I saw how excited they were to have what they seemed to feel was almost like a new superpower, I was super hooked. For me, it was incredibly gratifying to shift from helping companies grow to helping people grow. Showing people how to be more persuasive so they can get more of what they want became my itch. And I've been lucky enough to have the financial freedom that if that's my itch, I get to scratch it. So I am so happy that we get to work together, and I cannot wait to hear what you do with your own new superpowers. One thing before we dive in. I will never tell you there is only one way to be persuasive. My goal is to help you become the most powerful version of yourself. That's why you'll always hear me talk about my communications buffet. I'm sure you've eaten at a buffet, right? I want you to picture yourself there. You walk along, there's lots of options. You decide, I'm going to take this, I'm not going to take that, I'm going to skip that. Oh, that looks kind of good. I haven't tried that before, but it looks kind of tasty. Maybe I'll try that. It's sort of like you and the chef are working together. You're collaborating to make sure that you get the perfect meal that is designed just for you. That is the opposite of some super expensive, super fancy restaurant with a fixed menu where you just sit down and they start bringing you food and you have no choice. The buffet is where you take part in the decision. The buffet is when you and I are going to work together to get you what you need, get you what you want. I believe being persuasive is personal. So my communication training is a communications buffet. Everything I give you will be tasty, and I promise I will let you know when there's something that is so good you shouldn't pass it up. But in the end, I am designing the training so you can choose the thing you need, the thing you want, the thing that will help you be the most powerful, most persuasive version of yourself. This is our first time working together, so it's also a little different on the buffet side. I hope it's okay that just this time, I am choosing the dish for you. I am choosing the Persuasion Foundation as your very first lesson because it's one of the most important things I teach, and it becomes a fabulous foundation for everything else we might do together. I am totally serious that I've used this with one group that had been working on their story for 7 months. And I met them a week before their deadline, the week before they had to get in front of this giant audience and deliver this message. And they looked to me and said, Ken, can you help? We've been working this for 7 months. It hasn't worked. Can you help? We went through exactly the steps that you're going to go through today, and we were done in 2 days. Yeah, we had a couple of days of polishing, and we were done 3 days before the deadline. I used the same process interactively with another senior group at a very large company where they were struggling to communicate their value to external groups outside the company or inside the company. I taught this executive team how to use the process on one day. We worked together on it interactively. By the middle of the next day, we had a story that worked so well, that was so powerful. The VP of this entire organization looked at it and said, this is finally a group that I actually want to work for. This process will work. It's going to save you time and it's going to help you get better results. I just ask that you trust me that I've picked the right first dish for you from the communications buffet. And let's go ahead and dive in. You've probably noticed that in all my introductory videos, my speaking is fast and my edits are really tight. It's for social media and people are busy and you know the game, right? But now that we're working together and our focus is learning, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to make sure that you get all the value that you're looking for. Of course, if you ever think I'm going too slow, I'm begging you to let me know. My mission is to make sure you get more of what you want. So if adjusting my style can help you more, I want to hear from you, all right? Our goal is to make every lesson kind of a bite-sized, one-sitting topic. That'll make it easier for you to go back and you can search for things you want to hear again and you can search by title. But as always, I'd like to hear from you on whether that unit is the right amount, whether you actually look at things multiple times and whether the length is about right for you, right? I want to make sure this is a good fit for how you want to learn. I also find that a lot of people think that the money they put into slides determines whether they can be persuasive, the production value of their slides, all right? They watch all these free TED Talks, which, by the way, I absolutely recommend, are absolutely awesome, both for the content and for the way people present. But it's really hard to tell how much the speaker, how much of what's said versus how much is the slides, and where that value is. I want you to know that you can be persuasive. I want you to know you are the star. So you're going to see, I'll use a variety of slide formats, but every one of them is something created in a modest amount of time by a person who is not a professional designer. And usually that person is me. I'm doing that because I want you to know that you can create persuasive stories, even if you use slides. This works whether you do or you don't. But even if you use slides, you can be persuasive and you can create these stories and you can build them on your own at your desk without paying someone else to help you, all right? So this is the first lesson in the Persuasion Foundation formula. The Persuasion Foundation is easily one of the most important things that we can work on together. And we're going to use this technique anytime we need someone to take some sort of action. And I mean action in the broadest sense, right? When we want someone to do something, we want them to approve our idea. When we want them to change their mind about something. When we want them to embrace our ideas, buy our product or service, or just get out of our way and let us do our thing, right? Whatever it is, we want them to do something. That's what we're after. And because this technique is new for you, you're probably going to use it most often when the stakes are high, when the outcome is especially important, when you have time to plan. But over time, this is going to become second nature, and you're going to find yourself using it even in live conversation. The end goal of the Persuasion Foundation formula is the first draft of your story to persuade a target audience. That's a pretty packed sentence, right? So let's take that goal apart. There's kind of 4 key phrases, right? First draft, your story, persuade, and target audience. So let's take that apart. When I say first draft, it's because what we end with could still be pretty raw, right? This comes before all your final wordsmithing, but this is important because we don't even know when we start, are we going to deliver this in person? Are we going to deliver it in a brochure, in a website, in direct mail? The delivery method really doesn't matter to what we're building here, right? What we're after is the story. This is the hardest part, by far the hardest part, and we're going to make it easy. We're after the skeleton, and we can refine that skeleton and apply it to any method of delivery, in person, phone, website, whatever it is. If you were back in school, you might almost think of this as the outline of your paper, but we're going to go into a little more detail than a basic outline. We're trying to figure out, though, is what are the points we want to make, and in what order do we want to make them? Later on, when we know how we'll deliver our story, we'll turn our first draft into some fabulous final form. But I don't want to downplay that has to be done eventually. We're going to talk about tricks of the trade for better writing to get that final story to be super persuasive. And we'll do that if you and I keep working together after this course. But right now, here's my promise. Wordsmithing is child's play compared to knowing the story you want to make. So we're going to do that first draft. That's what we mean by that. And this may sound funny, but one of the most important things about having the right story is what you leave out. Putting things into your story that don't help you is kind of a double whammy. First, you waste your own time because you're creating stuff that doesn't matter, right? Doesn't help. But even worse, it hurts hurts your cause. When you weigh down a good argument with a bunch of things your audience doesn't care about, you lose them. And when you lose your audience, you can forget about getting what you want. All right, so second part of our goal is story. The second part, creating this first draft, the second part is that story word that keeps coming up, right? If you're in sales, you might call your highest stakes communication a pitch, a sales pitch, right? If you're not in sales, you may hate calling anything a pitch because it sounds super salesy, so I tend to not use that word very much. But a story matters, right? You can use whatever word you want, but as humans, we are hardwired to want to listen to stories. And personally, I like the word story because it's this constant reminder. I am not just spouting facts. That is not going to work. That is not going to make me persuasive. I am bringing people into my topic in a way that's engaging and exciting and tied to what they care about. All right, third key word, persuade. This may sound a little harsh, but if you are taking up someone's time, communicating with them, when you haven't thought in advance of what you want them to do or think about that's different than what they do or think today, you are wasting their time and you are wasting your own time. The classic thing I hear, I just want them to know this stuff. I just want them to know is rarely, if ever, worth anyone's time if you can't figure out what the person will do or think differently because they know. So if your goal is about persuading someone to do something, it's going to keep you sharp. You're not just going to get lazy and think, oh, I'm just got to spout all this stuff so that they know something. It's going to keep you sharp because you're focused on changing their behavior. And finally, who are we persuading? I use the phrase a target audience. In fact, I use the word audience a lot to be clear that we know who we're talking to. We care who we're talking to. And so, of course, we adjust a little bit as the audience changes. We don't talk to a technology buyer, a chief marketing officer, or our 13-year-old nephew, or an employee we just hired in the same way, right? If the only thing you get out of this lesson is that you need the solemn commitment. Every time you're asked to give a presentation, or write an email, or write a product description, every time you're asked, the first question out of your mouth should be, who is my audience? I'm sort of going to joke later about various parts of this process where we don't think about our audience, but it's the exception. But if you will just do that, if you will ask, who is my audience every time, you will already be more effective than the vast majority of people that are out there. If you're thinking ahead, and you probably are, yes, this means you will sometimes want more than one story. All your stories would be consistent, but that doesn't mean they're exactly the same. Don't worry that it sounds like I'm giving you extra work. In the vast majority of your high-stakes communications, the people in your audience are going to have enough in common that you can think of them as a group. We're going to come back to that later. All right, we've got our goal. We're going to go quickly and efficiently, and we're going to create our first draft of a story to persuade a target audience. Let's go. In this first lesson, we're going to start slow. We're going to do a little preparation. We're going to use this lesson to gather any materials that already exist. Don't worry if they don't, so that you can power through your persuasion foundation formula without getting bogged down. Now, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this little prep step, this little gathering step first? It's not just because it's the fastest path, but for a lot of us, busy people, it's kind of the only path. And here's why. You want to get done quickly, right? So you wouldn't kill your progress by putting some big obstacle in front of yourself, right? But we do this all the time. Two of the most classic obstacles we put in front of ourselves are getting intimidated by a blank page and getting distracted while looking something up. This course will take care of your blank page problem. I promise you. I will make sure you never feel like you're staring at a blank page and don't know where to go. But I want to go beyond that because I also want to minimize delays that happen when you go off to do some research and get distracted. To help with that, the first step is gather up a bunch of reference material you need in later lessons so you don't feel like you're always digging for it instead of moving forward. Don't worry if you don't have all of it. Don't even worry if you don't even have some of it. That's totally fine. Most of what we're going to do is already in your head. But if you've done a ton of work already, I hate wasting time and I hate wasting energy redoing stuff. So I'm going to go through all that bunch of stuff we've got and I'm going to ask you, do you have some of this? Do you have some of this? And the output of this first lesson will be the collection of that stuff, okay? Any part that you've got at your fingertips by the time we're done is going to make the whole process faster and smoother, and it's going to help you focus and keep you from having to dig through all this stuff. So whether you end up with a giant pile of existing material today or not, your result will be the same. First draft of a story to persuade a target audience. To make our discussion clearer and a little less redundant, so I'm not having to always say the idea or the product or the this or the initiative, whatever it is, right? I'm going to mostly talk as if our audience is a potential customer and our goal is to persuade them to buy something from us, right? But the steps are the same. Anytime you want someone to take action, it won't matter. Maybe you want someone to invest in your company so you can expand. Maybe you want your best customers to agree to do a testimonial video. Maybe you want a manager at your restaurant job to approve your idea to set tables with wine glasses because you want to increase wine purchases. Whatever it is, we're going to go through the same steps, all right? So here we go. We're going to start gathering, all right? Let's go and start with any information you have about your product or service. This is the most concrete part, right? I promised you I was going to pretend your audience is the customer and the action you wanted for them to buy a product. And I promised I wouldn't constantly list all these other things you could use this approach for. But because of the first one, I want to make it clear, this approach applies to anything that you want your audience to do. So in this step, if you've got a new initiative or a new campaign, what are all the details of that initiative or campaign? If you want someone to approve an acquisition, what do we know about the acquisition or the acquired company? If you want someone to work for free for your brand new company on the hope they might make some money later on or something, what are all the features of that experience of working for you that would make it worth working for your company for free? As usual, if you don't have anything here, that's fine, but let's get creative about what you've already been doing. If you have any emails, maybe it's just an email describing the features of your product you're offering, that's a start. Any sort of brochure is obvious. If you've already got a website, awesome, that's fantastic. If you've got any page that describes your product or service, have it handy. If you've ever written a letter promoting your stuff to somebody, grab the letter. Do you have a brochure? Do you have a proposal? Just grab it all, put it in a pile. Okay. We've gathered whatever we have handy about the product or service, right? Product, service, initiative, whatever we got, we've gathered that stuff up. Let's start to cast a wider net now. Let's move on to all the great things about you personally and about your company if you have one. Do you have a bio? Do you have a resume? Do you have some sort of certifications or special training? Do you have a partner? If you have a partner, let's get that person's resume. Do you have the kind of business where vendors are kind of important? Killer support team. All of these are things that make it more attractive for someone to do business with you. So grab whatever material exists or just jot down a note so that you've got it later. All right, we're going to keep going. What about nice things customers or partners have said about you or your company or your product? Do you have testimonials? Are you in the kind of business where you might have Yelp reviews or maybe you've done some surveys? Maybe people have emailed you something or texted you something. Just grab your favorites, put them in a pile. We're going to use those things. Okay, now we're going to switch gears and think about our audience. Now, this is a little premature because in the next lesson, we're going to talk about audience. But if you've already got someone in mind, I want you just to start thinking about this. We're pretending your first audience is your customers, right? Because it usually is. That is, I've been doing this a long time, and the number one audience I'm always asked to persuade is customers. I'd say probably the second audience, just so you know, is probably the sales team, teaching the sales team to behave in a certain way. But we're going to pretend it's a customer. We're going to talk specifically about picking our audience in an upcoming lesson. But for now, if you have an audience in mind, if you know who you'd like to persuade, grab whatever you already have about them or from them. Did you take notes in a meeting? Did you take notes in a phone call? Did you ever jot down anything about some surprising hope or fear that they mentioned? Some frustration, something that takes all their time and they just makes them crazy? Have you ever checked out an online community where your audience hangs out and looked at their discussions? Did you ever cut and paste any of that and put it somewhere or print it out so that you could spark your memory sometime in the future? It is totally okay if you don't have any physical documents about what you've learned about your audience. But if you have anything, it's going to save you time later. So just grab it now. I want a quick thought of where to keep all this stuff. I keep saying grab it or put it aside, right? What do I mean by that? Let's talk about how to keep all this stuff. It is totally fine to keep everything on paper or in a pile or even electronically. And I'm going to tell you exactly what I do. I'm not saying you should do this. I'm just saying this is my infrastructure, all right? Almost all of my notes, every phone call, every meeting, almost all my notes are in a software package called Microsoft OneNote, part of the Microsoft Office suite. If you know someone that uses OneNote, they probably love it. If you don't, then you might not have even heard of it. OneNote is center of my universe. If I'm working with somebody else, my notes are usually in Dropbox or even Google Docs. Google Docs is great because two people can edit the document at the same time. If we work together in future things about writing, there's some workshops I do where we use Google Docs and it's fantastic because multiple people can be working and looking at each other's work at the same time. There's a ton of choices. The point is, it really doesn't matter. Here's all I want you to do. I want you to realize that searching through electronic notes will steal your time. So if your notes are all electronic, that's great. Just make sure you use some tool where you can find things quickly. All right. As I said at the beginning of this lesson, our two enemies are the blank page and distraction finding things. As you and I work together, I want to make sure you never feel stuck with a blank page. And whether you just pulled together a mountain of material in your product, your company, your customer testimonials, and your audience, whether you've got a mountain of stuff around those things, or you just grabbed a few things, or maybe you grabbed nothing because everything's in your head, all that's okay. Every step you do now just saves time and reduces distraction later. You build momentum and you can find what you need without wasting time. It is all about helping you be comfortable and efficient. That's my goal, for you to get what you want faster. Good news, it's time to celebrate. You are done with the first step, the first lesson in this course. Between what's in your brain and the stuff that you've pulled together, you're done. You're done with this first lesson. Take a moment, congratulate yourself, enjoy your first milestone, because this first step is always the hardest. It's always hardest to just get going. You on your way to helping people who matter understand that your ideas are important and your ideas should win. And so when you're ready, come on over to lesson 2. I'm already there waiting for you. Let's keep going.